Okay, we're live. Okay, so hello everybody. I'm Bucky Badger W. Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to my video. This is my NBA draft reaction live stream. I've tried two before this. I froze up the last time, kind of. I had uh, kind of a lot of noise outside, but so I had to end that one. I ended up accidentally deleting it. So we're gonna go try to do this again. Um, yeah, so this is just my NBA draft live stream reaction to it, I guess. Just what I thought went well, what I thought didn't go well. I'm gonna be going through all the picks, saying, grading them, saying what I thought about them. Hopefully, it's gonna be fun. So I'm also gonna try to keep each pick under a minute about because I don't want this live stream to go to like 2 hours long. That's not my goal. It's my goal is for this to be about half an hour long. Um, and then we can potentially do some other stuff. But let's start this out with pick number one of the Detroit Pistons. It was Cade Cunningham, point guard out of Oklahoma State. I'm not going to go too in depth on this one. We know it was the right pick. Cunningham, just the offensive engine, kind of the Luka Doncic mold. Is a great three-level scorer. A lot thanks to his height and skill as a scorer, ability to hit tough shots, and then he's a great playmaker. One of the best we've seen in recent years, and that's saying something because over recent years we've had guys like LaMelo Ball, Trae Young, Luka Doncic. So this is he's a special player. He can make every pass in the book. He's a great playmaker. He's a great scorer. He's going to be Detroit's offensive engine going forward. Even if he hits his floor, he's going to be like a better Lonzo Ball. So I think Cade Cunningham, 1,000% the right pick here. Give Detroit an A+ for that pick. So let's go on to the second pick. The Houston Rockets, it was Jalen Green, shooting guard from the G League Ignite. I wasn't a big fan of this pick. Now, I should say I gave it a C+ because on paper, Green is good enough to be like, excuse me, Jesus, sorry. I I should have muted myself there. But yeah, so Green is good enough to be the second best player in a draft. I think he's good enough to be the second pick in a draft. And I don't think that like when the Rockets look back on this pick in a couple of years, they're going to be like, "Oh my God, Green was a bust," because I think Green's a good player, right? Like he's a good scoring guard. I think he's Donovan Mitchell to a T. Basically, he's going to be high usage. He has that explosiveness that Mitchell has. He's a good shot maker. He's going to be so hard to guard at the next level because of that athleticism combined with, he has a good bag, and I don't like to use bag a lot in these, scoring bag, anything like that. I don't like to use that a ton when evaluating players, but you can't deny that he has it. Um, and so he's going to be a great perimeter scorer. The reason I'm going to move on to pick three here, though, because the reason it's just a C+ and not like an A like Cunningham is because Evan Mobley went pick three, and I think the Mobley, he was You can make an argument, in my opinion, that Mobley was the second best player in this class. Okay, okay, now it's showing it. But yeah, you can make an argument, in my opinion, that Mobley was the second best player, or not that he was the second best player, that he was the best player in this class. Evan Mobley. I may go a little in depth on this one because I love Mobley. He's probably the best defender I've ever evaluated, even though I haven't been, paying attention to the NBA draft for the longest time. He's still definitely the best defensive prospect I've ever evaluated. He's like Anthony Davis in that way. I think he's a slimmer Anthony Davis as my player comp because, he's going to come into the NBA and he has ridiculous defensive versatility. Like guarding guards, he's he's good. He's better than most guards are in this class at guarding other guards. It's insane because that length that he has, that height that he has, and then he has, very solid lateral quickness, and he's able to stay with guys on the perimeter. Then he's an elite rim protector. I mean, I don't like what can't he do? And on defense, at least, he has great defensive IQ and awareness. Just Evan Mobley to me is one of the best defensive prospects of all time. He has the potential to be a top 5 to 10 defender of all time, and that's just on defense. Because on offense, he's also very skilled. He has a great game. He's a very good passer. I think he can develop into being a good shooter. as of right now, he's probably more of just a lob threat, which I should say he's elite at being a lob threat. And so he's like DeAndre Ayton was a couple of years ago, except he's a little bit slimmer, but then he's a lot better defensively with his IQ, with his length, with his ability to switch on to perimeter guys. He's better on offense, a lot better on offense at everything except being a roller. I mean, he's a good rebounder. The only weaknesses I have for him is really his weight because he could get bounced around by guys like Joel Embiid in the NBA, and his post scoring, like traditional post scoring that may put a cap on how good he can be offensively, but probably not. I just think he can be Anthony Davis, and he can be better than Anthony Davis because Anthony Davis, I mean, he doesn't. I don't even think that. I think that his ceiling as like a guard defender or a switchable defender is higher than Anthony Davis is. Um, and maybe his rim protection is around what AD can be, but if you're for me, if you're the Cavs, you can't pass on Anthony Davis at pick 2, which I think Evan Mobley is. And sorry if you're the Rockets. And then for the Cavs, I mean, I know you got like Jared Allen there. Oh, my bad. Switch back to Cunningham, but I know you got Jared Allen there and whatnot. But Mobley, I mean, he's the way to go. There isn't much to it. Fit be damned, Evan Mobley was the right pick here. I've gone into a lot more detail on this in my draft preview video where I wasn't on a live stream, so I got to write down my thoughts beforehand and come up with more, come up with smarter thoughts. So if you really want my ideas on Mobley, you should watch that, or you should follow my Twitter. I talk a lot about Evan Mobley on my Twitter because I really like Evan Mobley. He's definitely one of my favorite players in this draft. I give that pick an A+. Now, pick number 4 to the Raptors. They took Scottie Barnes, small forward from Florida State. I thought that this was definitely one of the more puzzling picks of the draft. Barnes. Oh my God, I got a sore throat right now. It's killing me, but I'm gonna keep going. Barnes, I think, he's a versatile defending forward. As I have there on my little graphic, I took a lot of time to make those graphics. But yeah, so he's a versatile defending forward. Really he can guard 1 through 4 very comfortably. He pressures ball handlers. Like I think Scottie Barnes, I can see why they wanted to pick Scottie Barnes here is what I'll say. Because of his defensive versatility, his size and athleticism. Like I can see they already have like Anunoby and Pascal Siakam, so they already have two of the Anunoby's a top 5 forward defender in the NBA and Siakam's like top 10, 15, 20, something like that. So they're already elite defensively at the forward position. I mean, they got Van Vliet, who's a really good defending guard. Like, the Raptors are set defensively, which is why this pick was a little puzzling. But, I mean, they could be if Barnes, like, turns into what his potential can be, they can become one of the best defensive teams of all time. And that's, not factoring in that they could add, a better rim protector. I mean, they got Kyle Lowry right now. Lowry's leaving this offseason. It's my prediction, probably later today. But yeah, I mean, so I think Scottie Barnes there is a solid defender. But then on offense, he's very unpolished, I think. As I have in his weaknesses, his offensive role, especially in the half court, is really what made this pick puzzling to me, because that's really what the Raptors need. The Raptors don't need defense. Like I said, they're already set on defense, but they need like more creators. I mean, that's why the guy who got picked next was the right pick, because they need more like Van Vliet, Siakam. They're going to be their 2 best offensive players after Lowry leaves, and they're more, in my opinion, like secondary creators, where Barnes is like really more of a tertiary creator. He's a solid playmaker, but also his playmaking impact is going to be a little bit stunted if he can't score that well in the NBA. And right now, like, his ball handling, his shooting is definitely not on the level that it needs to be for him to be able to do that. So that's why this pick was definitely a little bit puzzling to me. Um, is what it is. I'll just say they should have picked the guy that got picked next. Guy that got picked next, Jalen Suggs. I gave that pick a C-. The guy that got picked next, Jalen Suggs, pick number 5 to the Magic, gave that pick an A. Not an A+ by my standards. I mean, it could very well be an A+, But I'll say the Raptors should have picked Suggs because, like I said, they needed another ball handler. That's what the Magic got here, which I mean, you can say here for the Magic, like the fit isn't the greatest because you already have Cole Anthony, you got Markel Fultz, R.J. Hampton, so you already really have three young point guards. It, on paper, it doesn't really make sense to bring in a fifth, a fourth, with Suggs here. But Suggs was definitely the right value pick. Suggs is a great pick and roll player. He's a great defensive point guard. He's amazing in in transition. He's one of the best prospects I've ever evaluated in transition. Just with his IQ and ability to either get to the basket, even though finishing isn't great for him, he has an ability to get to the basket and finish. He's is he the second? I'll say he's the third best playmaker in this class by Cunningham and the guy that got picked after him. Maybe you could make an argument for like the Sharif Coopers of the world. Probably forgetting someone, but yeah, Suggs has an elite upside as a great playmaker, as a great defensive point guard, and the Magic. I mean, they just took the guy that fell into their laps. They went best player available, which when you're in a rebuild is 100% the right thing to do. It doesn't matter about fit, because here's my little rant about fit. Like, fit is so overrated in the NBA draft because I think fit is how I've said this before, but fit is how the Sacramento Kings ended up with Marvin Bagley over Luka Doncic because they're like, oh my God, we already have De'Aaron Fox here. But then Luka Doncic, when a lot of people thought Luka Doncic was a better prospect, Luka Doncic, like, what is it now, 3 years ahead, is so much better of a basketball player than Barnes. And now they're like, they're wishing, since they were in a rebuild, they should have just won best player. Here, let me start over because that was unintelligible. But fit over talent in the NBA draft is idiotic, especially at the top of the draft. It's how the Kings ended up with Marvin Bagley ahead of Luka Doncic. And here's how. I think that Bagley, they already had De'Aaron Fox there in Sacramento. So they're like, oh, we don't need another point guard. Well, now look at where they at. Now look at where they are at 3 years down the road. Because Doncic, they knew Doncic was the better prospect. So you have to take Doncic, especially if you're in the rebuild. Because, you always want the better player. Better players will 100% of the time figure it out. And even like if you're drafting for fit, I think you should sign free agents potentially for fit because you already know what free agents are. But in the NBA draft, if you think one guy is better than the other guy, there's no, unless you're a contender, which we'll see later on with the Warriors. I'll just say the 7th pick with Jonathan Kuminga was not a good pick, and I'll go in more in depth on that later. But unless you're a contender, and like you really need something to help, to help you win in your championship window, there's no reason that you should take talent, that you should take fit over talent. So I think this was 100% the right pick with Jalen Suggs. Like if Cole Anthony and Jalen Suggs both turn out to be like top 50 players and they both turn out to be elite point guards, you're not mad about that. Like you're not mad that you have both of them. It's the same thing like with the Kings. With like the Kings made the right decision last year with De'Aaron Fox. They already had De'Aaron Fox, but they were like, oh, Tyrese Haliburton is the best player on our board. We should take him. With like the 9th pick or whatever. Now they have Fox and Haliburton instead of, they would have had like Fox and, I mean, who else was like a good prospect in last year? They could have had Fox and like, I don't know. But 2020 NBA draft. Here, I'm asking Siri for this, but yeah, so the 12th pick, they went Tyrese Haliburton. They could have had like De'Aaron Fox and Jalen Smith from Maryland, but we know now that wouldn't have been, because that would have been the better fit, but it wouldn't work now. So I just went really in depth on that, like spent 3 minutes saying absolutely nothing, but it's a stream. I'm gonna go a little bit off topic, unfortunately. My mind is going to wander. But let's go on to the 6th pick. I thought picks 1 through 5 should have been pretty easy. In my mock draft, I went Pick 1, Cunningham. Pick 2, to the Rockets, Mobley. I had no trades. Pick 3, Jalen Green. Pick 4, Suggs. Pick 5, Barnes. So I thought that should have been easier. And then I think with the 6th pick, it should have gotten a little bit more difficult. I thought the Thunder were gonna take Kuminga here. I'm kind of glad they didn't, although I don't love Josh Giddey here. He's the 13th ranked player on my big board, and I think, oh, excuse me, he's the 13th ranked player on my big board, and I think he's a solid player, but I think there were definitely better players available. That said, I don't have a problem with Giddey here. I think my player comp is a bigger D'Angelo Russell, and I think if D'Angelo Russell was, I mean, he's listed as 6'7" here, but I think he's closer to 6'9". If D'Angelo Russell was 6'9", D'Angelo Russell would be like a top 20 player in the NBA. So Josh Giddey, if he turns into a bigger D'Angelo Russell, the NBA is going to have a monster on their hands. And so Giddey, he's a solid off-ball defender, which is one of his strengths, but really his main strength is that he's arguably, I mean, I said Suggs was probably the 3rd best playmaker in the draft. Giddey was probably number 2 ahead of him. I think I'm sticking to that. I think Sharife Cooper, I'll say Sharife Cooper would be number 3, but Suggs number 4 then, Giddey number 2. He's a bit worse than Cunningham, but I think Giddey's playmaking ability is so good that I think this was the right pick because, if he turns into a very good playmaker at 6'9", even though he's not a great scorer right now, and it's going to be rather hard for him to, be a great playmaker because he can't put pressure on the defense if he can't score. I think if he hits his upside and he finds an ability to even be like a 10 to 12 point per game scorer, he'll also average like 10 assists. I mean, we see average 8.4 assists. It's kind of eerily similar, not eerily, but it's kind of similar to Luka Doncic a couple years ago when people were like, when he wasn't the greatest defender, he's not a great athlete, he's not the best scorer of all time coming out as a prospect. I mean, he's an international guy, and people were like, oh my God, this Luka Doncic, like, in the Spanish league, people were watching Luka Doncic and they were like, oh my God, this Luka Doncic, he is the real deal. You have to come see him play because he's like a magician out there on the court. It's the same with Giddey. I mean, people that watch the NBL a lot, they say, like, Josh Giddey, he's a ridiculous player. Like, you watch Josh Giddey, and it's amazing what he can do with the basketball, finding teammates, all of that. And I think playmaking is one of the most important aspects of the game. The Thunder took a really good one here, and they have picks later in the draft to reinforce this Giddey pick in case it doesn't turn out. So, I mean, even if I gave this pick a C, even if this pick busts, it's not that much of a problem for the Thunder because they have like 500 picks over the next 2 years. Okay, so now, arguably my least favorite pick of the entire draft, at pick number 7, the Golden State Warriors went with Jonathan Kuminga, point guard, power forward / small forward out of the G League Ignite. I had him number 10 on my draft board, so on paper this isn't the worst pick of all time. But for the Golden State Warriors, I went on the rant about not drafting for talent over fit. I mean, yes, drafting for talent over fit earlier in the video, and I think if Kuminga got just picked at pick 7 by any old team, like if the Thunder went and picked Kuminga at pick 7, if they had pick 7, that wouldn't have been a problem for me. I think that was okay value. Because Kuminga just has a prospect. I mean, he has a lot of potential. He's big. He's young. He has ridiculous athleticism. And even being like a very unpolished scorer, he averaged 17.1 points per 75 possessions against solid competition in the G League last year, like guys that he's going to see in the NBA this year. So I think that that's good for Kuminga. But then at the same time, excuse me. Okay. At the same time, though, for Kuminga, the Golden State Warriors was the worst. The Golden State Warriors and Jonathan Kuminga was the worst fit in this entire draft. Because the Warriors, you have prime Steph Curry right now. He should have won the MVP last year. He's the best player in the NBA right now. He's ridiculous. I mean, he's one of the best ball handlers of all time. The greatest shooter of all time. One of the greatest scorers of all time. A very good playmaker because of his gravity off the ball. Steph Curry is this peak right now is like a top 10 peak of all time easily from Steph Curry. Um, you have prime, a little bit out of prime Draymond Green, but still Draymond Green. He hasn't fallen off a cliff. You still got Klay Thompson, and you are going to come out here and you are going to waste this pick on a developmental project. It's the same thing that they did with James Wiseman last year. They come out and waste this pick on a developmental project. I'm sure Kuminga, he could turn out to be very good in the NBA. But for this window that they have with Steph Curry and Klay Thompson and Draymond Green, they absolutely use this seventh pick to no avail. This is not going to help them whatsoever in the long run because, in the long run, you have Kuminga right here, and he's a good player. But like when he is starting, like this year, he should probably be in the G League again because he's so unpolished as a player. He's not a good playmaker. He's not a good defender despite his athleticism. He's ridiculously raw as a scorer. Like he's not going to be able to score against really good NBA competition. So I think he should probably be in the G League this year. And you're trying to win a championship this year. It doesn't really help if you sign like Kawhi Leonard this offseason. I mean, it does, but Kawhi Leonard probably won't play this year, maybe the next year. But like, you're trying to win a championship this year. Why are you taking a non-impact player in year one at pick 7? It makes absolutely no sense to me. And I mean, maybe in 5 years I'll be looking back on this when Kuminga, because I said Kuminga's ceiling is a young LeBron. Um, not no disrespect to LeBron there. His ceiling is like second, third year LeBron, which is an amazing player. And so, like, if I think just Jonathan Kuminga in 5 years, I could look back on this and I could be like, oh, well, he is the next young LeBron. And maybe they got like, Moses Moody, who they drafted later, and like maybe Nico Mannion turns into a star or something, and James Wiseman's really good. I'm like, well, I mean, now the Warriors have a whole new dynasty, and I was completely wrong about that. I'm I, I am very I doubt very much that that is going to happen. I think they're wasting the prime of Steph Curry's career. I don't want him to demand a trade because he was the hero, then turned into the villain when KD arrived. Now he's the hero again. I don't want him. I don't want to see him turn back into the villain. But I mean, I don't fault him if he tries to request a trade. So that's Jonathan Kuminga. Um, let's move on to pick 8. The Orlando Magic selected Franz Wagner, small forward from Michigan. I saw Franz Wagner play against, if you can tell by my profile picture and my name on YouTube, my Wisconsin Badgers. Saw Franz Wagner play them, and absolutely, I was like, how is this guy not the projected number 1 pick in the draft? I mean, Franz, he had a couple good games last year that were so good. I mean, Franz, I have him as an A minus here. I think, we talked about Scottie Barnes earlier. Right now, I think Franz Wagner is a better Scottie Barnes. Scottie Barnes, I still probably would have taken earlier than him. That's why I have him higher on my big board. I still take Scottie Barnes ahead of Franz Wagner, but Wagner's the better player right now just because of like Barnes' potential. But Wagner's the better player right now. Wagner, I have his player comp as kind of a Jimmy Butler light because I think on defense he has ridiculous versatility, very quick laterally. He's very aware off ball as like a help side guy. He has a very, very long wingspan. And he's I don't know like how him and Mo Wagner are related because they're just completely different players. Like Wagner is kind of Mo Wagner is like a stretch 5. Franz is more of like he's like a playmate, like he's like a defensive versatile like 6'9" forward who can move his feet with the best of them. Well, Mo Wagner is really not anything special on the defensive end. It's weird, but they are brothers, I guess. And so I think early in his career he should probably be a 3-and-D wing. But then later in his career, I think he's a good cutter. He's going to be good in off-ball role, but also he's a very good playmaker. And even though he's not the best scorer, like I think you can put him in the pick and roll, even though now they have like Suggs and Cole Anthony, so they're going to have a lot of ball handlers. But I think you put him in the right role, and I think Franz Wagner can be a superstar. in due time. So I think that this was a great. I'm pretty sure that those were the only two picks the Magic had this draft. I think they may have signed an impact UDFA. Who by the way, at the end of this video, I'm talking about the UDFA's, but uh, yeah. Anyway, I think they may have signed an impact UDFA, if I'm not mistaken. But I think from what I've seen, um, Franz Wagner and Jalen Suggs is a great two picks in the NBA draft um, to kind of start out your rebuild. Okay, pick number 9, the Sacramento Kings. They select probably my favorite player in the draft. Mm, he's in my top 3 up there. Evan Mobley's arguably in my top 3 because nobody from Wisconsin was picked in the NBA draft. But they select Davion Mitchell, point guard out of Baylor. He was number 5 on my big board. I had his player comp as Cam Payne's offense. By the way, this postseason campaign, like a star, a guy that could have gone to the All-Star game with, yeah, and Marcus Smart's defense. Um, I think Mitchell, I mean, his defense, he won the Defensive Player of the Year last year in college basketball over like Evan Mobley and Scotty Barnes and all these guys, which is pretty damn impressive. He has some of the quickest hands and feet I've ever seen. When they played Wisconsin in the NCAA tournament, my man Demetric Trice, I'm sorry, you know, I'm sure you're not going to see this, but Demetric Trice, I'm sorry, but Davion Mitchell was just pestering him all game. He was making life so hard on Demetric, and it was so hard to watch. Um, he's such a good defender. I mean, he's I see no. I mean, I see his upside definitely as a top 10 guard defender in the history of the NBA. Um, he's just so good defensively. He's aware also, even at he's he's very quick laterally and he has very quick hands. That doesn't mean that he's not very aware though, and he doesn't have a very high defensive IQ. So I think Mitchell's a monster defensively. On offense, he has great blow-by ability because of his ridiculous quickness. I mean, he's one of the quickest players I've ever seen. He's a great passer. His shooting, he shot 44% last year from 3 on a lot of attempts. So I think he has the upside to be maybe an elite shooter at the next level. But like his free throw percentages, which are usually more indicative of shooting, and his 3-point percentages also over his career at both Auburn and Baylor haven't been great. So it's potentially possible that oh my bad. It's potentially possible that he's not going to be a great shooter at the next level. But I think Mitchell, he was a good pick here. Had him ranked number 5 on my big board. He could have been all the way up at number 4, ahead of Suggs. And so I think that was the great pick for Sacramento to make. I think year 1 he's going to be a guard defender off the bench, but as he grows, he's going to be Cam Payne on offense, Marcus Smart on defense. That's a scary player. That's like a top 20, top 10 player in the NBA, in my opinion. I gave this pick an A because, I mean, it is fit based, which I said I don't really care about fit at the top of the draft, especially if you're not a contending team. That said, they do have De'Aaron Fox and Tyrese Halliburton, so they do already have 2 young point guards. They're inserting Mitchell here into the mix, but three great young players are gonna figure it out. Like if Kyrie Irving and James Harden can figure it out, 2 ridiculously good scorers, then these 3 guys who I'm sorry, but they aren't on their level yet, at least, they'll be able to figure it out, I think. So pick number 9, an A for the Kings for Davion Mitchell. We're at 30 minutes already. I've gone through 9 picks and we're at 30 minutes. Man, okay, so this has been a long stream, but yeah. So at pick 10, the Memphis Grizzlies went with Zaire Williams, shooting guard out of Stanford. I had him number 24 on my big board. I grade this as a D. I didn't think it was a great pick. Um, I see the potential in Zaire Williams. He's 6'8". He has size. He has shot creation potential. He has potential maybe as a good shooter, but he did shoot 40. His true shooting percentage last year was 47.3%, which if anybody doesn't know, that's basically field goal percentage. It's field goal percentage, but they weigh in heavily, or they weigh more heavily. I think they take free throws into account also, and it weighs more heavily that like 3-pointers are worth more than 2-pointers. He's still, I think, a solid shooter, but yeah, I think his shot creation isn't great. Sorry, his shot creation is good. His shooting could potentially not be the greatest. He has turnover problems. He averaged 4.5 turnovers per 75. His finishing isn't great, which his best skill is definitely his scoring. So that's not the best if your finishing is a problem and he's not like a very fast or quick twitch athlete. I do see like his upside as like a Brandon Ingram type player, just because he has the same frame, he has the same shot creation ability. I think he has defensive ability right now and potential. So I see why you would pick Ziaire Williams, but also I just wasn't that high on him because I think his floor is pretty low. He wasn't great at Stanford last year. Um, yeah, I mean, I don't see, I don't see a ton of reason, especially to trade up to make this pick. I think they could have made this pick at 17 because I mean they took on like the contracts and really the negative that Eric Bledsoe brings to their team, and they downgraded from Valanciunas to Steven Adams. And I think the guy that I mean they traded the 17th pick and that to get the 10th pick. Um, I think the 17th pick was actually a better player, but whatever. Let's go on to pick 11. Charlotte Hornets selected James Bouknight, shooting guard out of UConn. I gave this pick, what did I give this pick? I gave this pick a B because I wasn't as high on Bouknight as some other people were. I saw people say that Bouknight should have been taken, with like the 6th pick by the Thunder. I think definitely not. Bouknight's like an athlete. I think he's kind of a Zach LaVine type player. He's a good like off-ball mover on offense. He said like in his draft interview, they were like, "Oh, how are you so good off the ball on offense? And like, how are you so good at cutting and getting open?" He was like, "Well, I'm just trying to get buckets. That's how you got to get buckets." I was like, "Well, touche, James Bouknight. That's a good answer." Um, and he averaged 26.8 points per 75 possessions last year on just under 55% true shooting, which is okay for a high volume guy. In fact, it's very good for a high volume guy. I think his main pluses kind of are his athleticism. He's very athletic, especially with his jumping ability. He can jump out of the roof, um, jump out of the room. Is that what it is? Jump out of the stadium, jump out of the arena, whatever it is, whatever the exclamation is. He's a great finisher. I think he has potential to be a really good shot creator. So his potential as a scorer in the NBA is really, really good. That said, right now his defense not the best. He has trouble with effort and awareness on defense, even though his physical skills could say like he could be pretty good defensively. Effort and awareness isn't really there. He has problems with turnovers and especially tunnel vision, just like getting downhill and then not knowing like where to pass the ball, or not knowing where to pass the ball, but just kind of bad shot selection and just not really getting his teammates involved. That goes along with playmaking. So I think it's a good fit alongside LaMelo, Terry Rozier. Like I think the Hornets are going to be ridiculously exciting to watch that next year. They got LaMelo, they got Miles Bridges, Kai Jones they drafted later in this draft, Bouknight, Scary Terry, Devontae Graham was a great shooter, Gordon Hayward. So I think they're going to be so fun to watch next year, and I think they're going to be a playoff team next year. I just didn't like this pick as much as other people maybe. So now we go on to probably the least liked pick of this draft with pick number 12. With pick number 12, the Spurs took Josh Primo, a small forward shooting guard, kind of hybrid there, a wing out of Alabama. Really, there isn't a ton much to him other than he's really young. I think he's like a young 18 or something, or he's very young, so he has a lot of room to grow. Um, his and then really he's a 3-and-D wing at this point. He has length and ability to stay with guys on the perimeter, which makes him a good defender. And then he's a very good 3-point shooter. Um, that said, and then he has some scoring potential, even though really, like, you're not at this point. I don't really think that he's ever going to be a guy that you want to give the ball to unless he's going to catch and shoot it a ton. Um, I had him number 29 on my big board. I thought that this was a big time reach. Uh, I mean, he's really just a 3-and-D guy, which I think, and he wasn't the best 3-and-D guy on the board. Trey Murphy was. Jared Butler was a better 3-and-D guy. Moses Moody was a better 3-and-D guy. Chris Duarte was a better 3-and-D guy. So there were a lot of better 3-and-D guys on the board, and he's not a bad player, but I mean they also got like Devin Vassell last year to fill that role. So I'm not going to give this. I mean I could have very well given this an F, but I think I see somewhat the potential, and also I think the Spurs have kind of earned the ability. They've kind of earned this one. Uh, with their drafting history. I'll give them kind of the benefit of the doubt here, but also I just don't really understand this pick a ton. Let's move on to pick 13, where the Indiana Pacers selected Chris Duarte, shooting guard from Oregon. I think Duarte he was also kind of a 3-and-D wing. He's a very good shooter. Even off the dribble, he's a very good shooter. Um, and he's a solid defender despite not having great speed or size. And then I think he's also a very good creator by himself. He's able to, with some success, get other teammates involved, but really I think he's a very good scorer by himself. I thought he was a better Did I think he was better? No, I think he was barely a worse prospect than Bouknight. Um, but yeah, I thought he was barely a worse prospect than Bouknight. He's a very similar player to Bouknight. It's just Duarte was here. I mean, for a small market team, if you're the Pacers, no, I'm a Timberwolves fan. I don't really want to harp on the small market team for making the choice here, but I think if you're a small market team, you probably want more upside with a pick, especially, a lot of your team right now is really just average. It's just eh. So I think Duarte, he was kind of a low upside, kind of help now guy, and I think there were definitely guys on the board who would have been better picks. But I did like Duarte, so I gave them a C plus because I liked him, and I didn't want to grade this pick too harshly. Thought he was rather worthy of the 13th pick. So the 14th pick, the Golden State Warriors redeemed themselves by selecting Moses Moody, shooting guard from Arkansas. I had Moody as the 7th ranked player on my big board. I thought he was the obvious pick for them at 7. I don't know how they passed him. Then I don't know how he fell to 14 after that. I have no idea how that happened. He's a very good shooter. He's very good without the ball, so I think he has a very good floor there. And in his first year, that's probably what he's going to be. He's just going to be an off-the-ball guy who can shoot. He has defensive ability and potential. He does tend to get blown by at times on defense by quicker guys, but he's very long. He has a big time wingspan, um, and so I think his defensive potential is through the roof. He's also very young, so I think he'll develop on that end. And even right now, he's a more than serviceable defender. And then shot creation, I think he could also have a strength there, where he could be. He's good at like hitting shots over guys. He's good at all of that as a shot creator. So I think when Steph goes to the bench, it's nice to know that Moses Moody's going to be there and he's going to be able to create shots for himself. He's going to be able to knock down open shots if Steph is on the floor. This was the right pick at 7. If you swap the Kuminga and Moody picks, I think that this is a very good draft for the Warriors, especially considering, or no, they didn't do anything after this, but yeah. So I think this was definitely one of the best picks of the draft. I give it an A plus. Okay, at pick 15, the Washington Wizards went with Corey Kispert, small forward from Gonzaga. I had him ranked number 13 on my big board, but I didn't give this pick a great grade. I think it's like a B minus C plus type pick. Um, Kispert he's Joe Harris basically. There isn't much to him other than he's a 3-point shooter, and you can't leave him open. You can't leave him open. They already have kind of that guy in Davis Bertans, but Kispert's younger. He can potentially develop another skill, although I don't think it's all that likely. And I think Kispert, like I said, he's a 3-point specialist. I mean, I think this pick, it's a solid pick, but it's nothing to get excited about. And the Wizards, they traded Russell Westbrook, and I feel like they're gonna trade, like, if you trade Westbrook, I feel like they have to trade Beal now this offseason, don't they? They have to. It feels like they have to trade him. Um, and I just think Kispert was not a high upside guy, so it didn't make a ton of sense to me that they're going into this rebuild and they're picking a role player at pick 15 when there are a lot more high upside guys there. But it is what it is for the Wizards. Gonna try to go a bit faster now since we're 15 picks in and I'm 41 minutes in. So let's go. Yeah, let's go to pick 16. The Houston Rockets selected Alperen Şengün, center from Turkey. I was a little bit lower on this pick than other people. A lot of people thought the Rockets had just this ridiculous draft. I didn't think that it was all that great. In fact, I thought they could have done a lot better. I would have liked Mobley and maybe another guard other than Jalen Green better than Green and Şengün, but whatever. This wasn't a bad pick. I had Şengün ranked as I think now number 26 on my big board, but I get the intrigue with him. He's a solid rim protector, even though he's not going to be a ridiculously great defender because he's not very laterally quick. He's not going to be able to stay with guys on the perimeter. Evan Mobley can, but whatever. And then he's going to be a guy that you can potentially throw it into on the post. He's a very good post scorer in Turkey, and I think he dominated the Turkish league. As you see there in the picture, he got the MVP for the Turkish league, which is known to be, I believe, one of the harder leagues to play in the world. Obviously, the NBA would be first, and then maybe some league in maybe the Spanish league, and then NCAA would be up there. Turkish league is somewhere in there. But yeah, I think his archetype is really a traditional big man, and really I think he has some upside, although his perimeter defense is a problem and his shooting is a problem, which I think caps his upside a bit. But I could see him developing maybe into a smaller Rudy Gobert. But right now I see him as a player comp of Jonas Valanciunas. I don't hate the pick, but I don't love it. Give it a C plus. Okay, I do love this pick though. Pick 17, the New Orleans Pelicans went with Trey Murphy, the third small forward out of Virginia. This, I think I got in my NBA mock draft. I wasn't trying. To be fair, I wasn't trying to predict what was going to happen in the draft, but still, I think I only got 3 picks right for this entire draft. Like I only predicted correctly 3 picks. This was one of them. It was Cade Cunningham to the Pistons, Trey Murphy to the Pelicans, and Jalen Johnson a couple picks later to the Hawks. So Trey Murphy he was a better Josh Primo, I would say. He was a better 3-point shooter and a better defender. He was maybe straight up as a player archetype, like of players who I would categorize as 3-and-D wings, he was the best one in this draft. Maybe Moses Moody was a better guy, but I wouldn't categorize him as a 3-and-D wing, at least out the gate. So Murphy, I think, was the best 3-and-D wing by trait in this class. He's a great 3-point shooter. He's a very long and active defender, and he's a good cutter, and he's going to be able to score kind of off the ball. If the Pelicans can add some guys in free agency, they could be scary next year, especially now with Murphy, because he's exactly what the Pelicans needed. They needed defenders and guys who can shoot the ball, because they had none of that last year, and Zion had to do it all by himself with no spacing. they're not going to have that problem this year with now Trey Murphy on the squad. Gave that one A. So now on to pick 18, another pick that I really, 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 really like. The Oklahoma City Thunder selecting Tre Mann, point guard from Florida. This pick I gave an A plus because I had Tre Mann as the 8th ranked player on my big board. He's a 6'5" point guard who can handle the ball. He has great offense. He has a great offensive feel, I think, and pace, especially in the pick and roll. They traded for Kemba Walker earlier. They have Josh Giddey now, who seems to categorize himself as a point guard, so maybe he's going to be running the point. They have Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Like I said, they have Kemba Walker. They have Theo Maledon, who they drafted last year. So it's a very crowded point guard room. But I think Tre Mann was one of the best. He was a great player in this class. I mean, I have his player comp as Trae Young. He's a bit bigger and he's a better defender. I mean, he's a good defender. He's also a bit bigger than Trae Young is. He's not the playmaker, obviously, that Young is. And he's a solid shooter. But really, I just think he's maybe going to be in the Cade Cunningham role, but light. I mean, he's going to be an offensive engine going forward for the Thunder. The only problem I see is, does he get stuck behind Giddey and Kemba Walker and Maledon and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander? We'll see. But if he gets his opportunity, he's going to be an offensive engine in his career. That's why I give it an A plus. I'll pick 19, another A. I like this stretch of picks. Pick 19, the Charlotte Hornets selected Kai Jones, power forward from Texas. This is, I mean, just from a fan's perspective, this is such a good pick because it's going to be so fun to watch him with LaMelo Ball and Rozier, and especially Ball throwing lobs to him and Miles Bridges next year. Like, it's going to be such a fun team to watch. Kai Jones he's an athletic rim runner. His player comp I have is Jaren Jackson Jr. And I think he's going to start he should start in his freshman year in the NBA. I think that really he was really a better, I don't know if he was better, but he was very similar to James Wiseman last year. He's more skilled offensively. He has he demonstrates some grab and go ability in transition, which maybe makes you think that he has good upside to become, a serviceable ball handler on the offensive end. I wouldn't lean on that though. Maybe a serviceable shooter. Once again, wouldn't lean on it though. But what he does do great is he is a great rim protector. He's a great lob threat, and he has great athleticism. That's what he's going to be in his freshman year and also later in his career. Hopefully, he develops some more offensive skill later in his career. But for now, this is really all that you can hope for. I mean, they're going to be such a fun team to watch, as I said, next year. Okay, yeah, let's move on to the 20th pick. Another pick that I got right. Jalen Johnson to the Atlanta Hawks, gave it a B. The power forward out of Duke, I think his upside is Pascal Siakam. They're both kind of versatile defending forwards, and Johnson definitely has a lot of upside as a versatile defender. Now, he does have problems with fouling and lateral quickness, but he has very good length, and his lateral quickness is okay. It's good enough if he really works on that footwork and he has great length. So I think his lateral quickness is okay to be a serviceable, versatile defending forward in the NBA. He also has kind of the upside that we've seen when he gets the ball and gets rolling in transition of being able to pass it out to teammates, being able to take it all the way in himself. We've seen from Giannis Antetokounmpo, Pascal Siakam, that can work in the NBA. And if Jalen Johnson develops into those guys, I'm not saying he will, but that could be amazing for the Atlanta Hawks. Now, I mean, he does, like, at the moment, right now, he's not a good shooter. He's not the best in the pick and roll, and he's not good enough to be elite in the pick and roll as the roller either. So, I mean, his offensive role right now is a little undefined. I think he's either going to be all or nothing on offense. He's either going to be a guy that, you give the ball to him, or I mean, he could be a great cutter, and he already is a great finisher. So like you give the ball to him, and he's a slasher, um, kind of like Pascal Siakam. So I think, or he's just gonna be a whole lot of nothing on offense. So I think his offensive role, it's all or nothing, and then defense. Once again, we'll see what can happen with his defensive versatility. He has great upside. Like he could be a very solid rim protector. I really just see Jalen Johnson more as an upside play here. But the Hawks, I have him as the 20th ranked player on my board. I would have probably liked a more instant contributor for the Hawks, especially after they went to the Eastern Conference Finals last year. I don't think they're going to do it again, but they could end up doing that again. If so, they're going to need enough. They're going to need a contributor instantly, which probably isn't what Johnson is. But then at the same time, they've kind of earned the right with how deep and talented their team is to go with the upside guy here at 20. Okay, so pick 21 now. Los Angeles Clippers. We have Keon Johnson. They selected Keon Johnson, point guard from Tennessee. I was a lot lower on Johnson than other people. I have him 23rd on my big board. I grade this as a C because they already do have a lot of point guards, and it's going to be, at least early on, it's going to be pretty hard for him to see any playing time. I have a ceiling kind of as a Ja Morant like player though, because he can jump. He can jump out more than out of the gym. He can jump out of the moon. I mean, I think he set the NBA Combine record with I think a 50-foot inch vertical, which I mean, just like you got to marvel at that. Like, imagine being able to jump 50 inches in the air. I'm not sure if they do that from a standing start or from a running start or whatever, but imagine being able to just do that. Like, that would be insanity. That'd be so fun. Um, but so he has very good athleticism. Obviously, he's a solid playmaker. He's a very good defender right now, but at the same time, he's not a good shooter, which doesn't bode well for a point guard. He doesn't have a lot of nuance on offense. He doesn't have great feel. It doesn't really seem, it really just seems like a lot of him on offense is forced, other than finishing. It just really doesn't, like Trey Mann has the factor, like that he's run a pick and roll like a million times because he just knows how to like set himself up and the defense up in perfect positions. Keon Johnson feels kind of like the opposite of that. Like he's kind of reading from a manual, like of how to operate a pick and roll or of how to set a defender up on a ball handling move. But he also has like turnover issues. So I think early in his career, he's not going to be an instant contributor, which the Clippers kind of need, especially if Kawhi returns to them later today or later this week, later this summer. But for the future, Johnson as a defender and then potentially as a shot creator has a lot of potential. So I can't grade this one too badly. Give it a C. Okay, pick 22. The graphics are a little bit behind me here. Yeah, the graphics are a bit behind. I don't know why, but I'm gonna move on to the pick number 22 for the Pacers. They took Isaiah Jackson, center out of Kentucky. I gave it a C plus. He's really, I said his player comp was JaVale McGee. He's a rim runner. He's like present day Dwight Howard kind of. He has potential maybe to be able to switch on two guys on the outside because he's a very good rim protector right now thanks to his athleticism, his freakish athleticism, kind of like Keon Johnson. And he has the potential. I mean, just look up Isaiah Jackson dunks. He will not be disappointed. But he has the potential maybe to switch on to smaller guys on the perimeter. We've seen that he maybe has that potential, but he's a bit too twitchy, and I think he's a little bit too prone to fouling if he does get into that role. That said, right now he should be a good rim runner as a rim protector and lob threat early in his career for the Pacers, and I think he probably doesn't have a ton of upside, but he'll be a good player in his NBA career as a rim runner. Let's move on to the 23rd pick, a pick I really liked. The Houston Rockets here, their first really good pick, in my opinion. They selected Usman Garuba, center from Real Madrid. I had him ranked on my big board as the number 11th prospect. His player comp to me is Draymond Green, which is a lofty comparison because it's really hard to expect him to turn into Draymond Green like from his IQ and awareness on defense, but I think he's a defensive anchor and he's a ridiculously versatile defender. He can guard 1 through 5, no problem really. Despite not being the biggest guy, like he can switch on to smaller guys and he can guard bigger guys in the post because of his ridiculous strength. He has great IQ on defense. He has a great motor. Like I said, he's very versatile. Like he's going to be just a Swiss Army knife is the best way to describe him on defense early in his career. Now on offense, especially in the half court, he's not going to have a ton of impact. Um, because he's not big, so he's not going to be like a lob threat. He's not a good shooter. He's not, he's a solid cutter, but he's not great. He's a solid finisher, but he isn't the best. He's not a great playmaker. So I think especially early in his career, he's really just going to be a defensive first guy. But I mean, if he turns into like a Draymond Green, you're definitely not mad about that, okay? Like that will definitely be good enough if he is that. Let's move on to pick 24. Oh, damn, my voice is like so. I already had a sore throat. It's getting so much sore from doing this. It's not going to be fun after the live stream, but whatever. We'll try to make the last couple picks go faster. Like we'll try to end the live stream probably after at least an hour and a half about that. But yeah, so pick 24, the Rockets had back-to-back picks. They went with Josh Christopher, shooting guard from Arizona State. I went as player comp as Norman Powell. He's really a scoring guard. He has playmaking and defensive potential, even though he isn't the greatest in those areas right now. He's a very good finisher. I think he just screams potential. Like his awareness and consistency and effort on defense isn't there 100% of the time. Um, like he only averaged 2 assists per 75 possessions last year, so that isn't great either. His shooting isn't great, so I don't think he's going to be an early contributor. But to take an upside guy here for the Rockets is definitely a good decision. Like of these 4 picks, at least 2 or 3 of them are bound to pan out. And if they do, obviously this was a successful draft for Houston. I think Josh Christopher could be one of those guys. At pick 25, the New York Knicks then went with Quentin Grimes, shooting guard from Houston. Another 3-and-D guard, or 3-and-D wing. I think he's a good rebounder also, but he's really just defense and shooting. And then, there isn't a ton much to him. Like playmaking, explosiveness, ball handling are all kind of issues. So early in his career and later in his career, he's probably just going to be a 3-and-D guy. Pick 26, a pick I really liked. The Denver Nuggets selected Bones Hyland, shooting guard from VCU. And Bones, I think, he definitely has a lot of potential to be very good in the NBA. I ranked him number 27 on my big board. He could definitely be a lot higher. I have his player comp as Emmanuel Quickley. I think he is a scoring guard. He has ridiculous shooting range. Like he can shoot from Steph Curry range and splash it in. He has 3-level scoring potential because he has a solid mid-range jumper. He's a solid scorer. Really, I think he's just going to be a microwave scorer in the NBA because he has that quickness and that size that is going to be so hard to stop with that length. His weaknesses, he's 165 pounds, so he's going to be bullied in the NBA at that size. He's not a very good playmaker at all. He's really just looking to get buckets for himself, and he's not consistent defensively, but that's fine. I think especially early in his career, the Nuggets could use a guy who off the bench is just gonna light up the scoreboard. He can average like 15 points off the bench in his rookie year, I think is his ceiling, which obviously the Nuggets would love. That would make them a contender in the West. So I think this was a great pick. Pick number 27, the Brooklyn Nets selected Cam Thomas, point guard from LSU. I gave it a D plus. Um, I really just, the Nets, they're trying to contend right now. They're not trying to build for the future. And Cam Thomas is going to be stuck behind a lot of guys, first of all. We'll see if he can beat out like Mike James for the starting or for the backup point guard role. We'll see. But even then, like they have Kyrie and Harden, he's not going to be playing a ton of minutes. And the Nets, they didn't need another scorer. Like Cam Thomas, he's a microwave scorer off the bench, just as Highland is, except he's worse at it. I think he's not as like explosive as Highland. He doesn't have the range that Highland does, even though he's a great shooter, and he's solid at getting his own shots. He's amazing at making tough shots. But then defense, playmaking, and finishing are his three weaknesses, which that's like the three weaknesses of the Nets. I mean, not playmaking, but like defense is the weakness of the Nets. They needed like a big man who they got later, but I didn't love that pick either, or like a wing who can defend. And I just didn't really. That wasn't what the pick was here with Thomas. So I didn't love that pick to the Nets with Thomas. Number 28, the Philadelphia 76ers selected Jaden Springer, shooting guard from Tennessee. I had him number 25 on my big board. He was he was an A off the draft. Sorry, he was an A pick for me. He was more of a defensive oriented guy. He has a lot of strength. He's very athletic, so I think that he can shut guys down on the wing. Um, and he's a solid playmaker too. He has scoring potential. He maybe has shooting as a weakness, but he could also, I think, become a solid shooter. So I think that this was a very good pick, because he's gonna early in his career he's gonna be a good defender, and then later in his career he can potentially blossom into a very good scorer and a good playmaker. So I wasn't as high on Springer as other guys were, as other people were, but at 28 this was definitely too far for him to fall. A good pick by the Sixers. 29, the Nets took Day'Ron Sharpe, center from North Carolina. They needed a center, but I didn't really love this pick. I think he's an Andre Drummond type guy, and really I didn't love Sharpe in this draft. I think he's a very good rebounder. He averaged 16.5 rebounds per 75 possessions, which is unheard of, is ridiculous. That's like Andre Drummond stats. So he has that, but then also like as a rim protector, which is really what the Nets need from a center, he isn't great. I think they'd be better off really having Nick Claxton in there. Um, and then on offense, he's good on putbacks. He's good as a go and get the rebound type of guy, which you may need. Except the Nets they don't miss a ton of shots with KD, Kyrie, and Harden. But he's a good offensive rebound guy. But really, right now he's not much else. He could be a solid playmaker, but also he's not gonna have like you're not gonna give the ball to Day'Ron Sharpe willingly. If you have KD, Kyrie, and James Harden on the court, like you're not gonna. That's not what he's gonna be doing. So I think this could end up being a solid pick, but I just don't love it. Pick 30, the Grizz go with Santi Aldama, power forward, maybe a point forward from Loyola Marymount. I'm gonna be honest. When they made this pick, I had heard of Aldama, but I hadn't really watched him whatsoever. Didn't know like anything about him, but I think he's a solid. I mean, now I've watched a little bit of him. He's an okay shooter. His ball handling's okay. He has upside as a rim protector, but right now he's really not much. And I have him number 44 on my draft board. Honestly, I just don't really see him becoming much of anything. I think he has a bad combination of like being very skinny and then also being very slow, especially laterally. He has a turnovers problem, and then he dominated really in the Patriot League, which is one of the worst leagues in the NCAA. That's how he dominated. I don't see a ton of potential for an Aldama here. That's why I have him as a D pick here. But let's move on to the second round. I'm going to go a lot less in depth on the second round pick here. On the second round picks, really just say what type of player they are and why I made the evaluation I did. Yeah, so with the Wizards, pick 31, they went with Isaiah Todd. I gave that a C. He's kind of a stretch 4, stretch 5 type of guy. I wasn't super high on Todd, but I think he does have some potential with defensive versatility and kind of maybe being a 3 and D forward for Todd there from the G League Ignite. At pick 32, the Thunder went with Jeremiah Robinson Earl, power forward from Villanova. I gave it an A. His Robinson Earl, he has some upside on the perimeter as a scorer. He's a very good finisher, so I think maybe put him in the dunker spot early on in his career. And he's very versatile defensively, so they can stick him on a power forward to start off games, but then he can defend all positions, I think, at a solid clip. Clippers at pick 33 took Jason Preston, point guard from Ohio, who I like. I gave it a B plus. It could have potentially been an A plus if it went to the right team, but then the Clippers there already took Keon Johnson this draft. They got Rondo, Reggie Jackson, Patrick Beverley. So I don't see once again I don't see a path to playing time for Preston, but I like Preston the player with his size and playmaking ability. Not super similar to Cunningham's, but he's a solid. He's a big guy who can make plays, who you'll always want. Pick 34, the Knicks went with Rokas Jokubaitis from FC Barcelona, who is your classic crafty European point guard, but he's not a great shooter, not a great defender. Knicks have a lot of guards, especially point guards who are young. Don't love the pick. D plus. Okay, on to the next 4 picks. Pick 35, the New Orleans Pelicans went with Herb Jones, power forward from Alabama. He's a B because he's probably not going to get a ton of playing time, which you will see from a lot of these second round picks, obviously. So that's not a big knock. He's also not a very good offensive player at all. Like, he's not giving you much value offensively, but he is very versatile defensively. I had him, I think, as the 30th player on my draft board, so I think he could have been drafted in the first round. He's very versatile defensively as a forward, probably even more versatile than like a guy like Robinson Earl. He won the SEC Player of the Year and Defensive Player of the Year, I'm pretty sure, last year. So he's a very versatile guy on the defensive end of the court. And that's what the Pelicans could potentially need. I think he can be a good instant contributor. The Knicks at pick 36 take another point guard. This time I'm giving him an A plus though, because it's Miles McBride out of West Virginia. I thought he was arguably a top 20 prospect. He has shot creation ability. He's a very good passer, especially out of the pick and roll. He's a great shooter. He's a very strong defender. Really, there isn't anything that Deuce McBride here can't do. He came up clutch constantly in Big 12 play with West Virginia, and every time I watch West Virginia, like, Deuce popped off the screen because he was constantly making plays on defense, passing, finding open guys, scoring the basketball. He's very good. So I think Deuce McBride, he was arguably a top 20 guy in this NBA draft. Drafting him at 36, like, if he gets his chance with the Knicks, he's going to be amazing. Pick 37, the Hornets went with JT Thor, center out of Auburn. I think that this is a very good pick because they're picking for upside, and the Hornets, an instant contributor. I mean, they're very deep, so I don't know if an instant contributor would have even helped. And Thor's upside as a long, like, potentially good shooter, shot creator, not a great passer, but like athletic defender, is very good. Very good pick at 37. 38, the Bulls go with the hometown kid, Ayo Dosunmu, shooting guard from Illinois. I loved Dosunmu in college, even though I'm a Wisconsin fan. that said, I didn't love him as an NBA prospect because I felt like when I went back and watched him, he got a lot of help at Illinois from being able, like especially with his playmaking, I think was overrated. He got a lot of help from just being able to dump it down. Sorry, to Kofi Coburn in the post, and Coburn would put someone on a poster. I think he's a solid like scorer and everything. And I think he's not a great finisher, which doesn't bode well for that, and he doesn't create much separation. He's a solid shooter, but he's not the best shooter of all time. But I think Ayo, especially now that he's in Chicago, he's gonna do well. B minus though. The next four picks, pick 39, the Kings went with Neemias Queta, center from Utah State, who is really a rim runner with some playmaking potential and like mid-range potential. They got like Richaun Holmes, who may leave them in free agency today though. And they do have, I think they recently traded for Tristan Thompson. They got Bagley there, so they have a lot of centers. So it's it's a little stacked there, or it's a little stacked to the brim at center. And I mean they're really their entire team is either point guards or centers. So not a great pick for Queta, but I like him as a prospect, so I give that one a C plus. A plus I gave to the 40th pick, Jared Butler, shooting guard for Baylor. I don't know how he fell all the way down here. Butler, in my opinion, I think he was arguably a top 10 player in this draft. I do know he has like a heart condition or something. Um, it's something with his blood, which obviously you hope that doesn't derail his pro career because he's a great shooter. He's a great defender. He's just a little bit worse of a version of Moses Moody. He's a good shot creator. He's good at hitting tough shots. And I mean, the Jazz here, he's going to be an instant contributor for the Jazz. This is an amazing pick for Utah. Like, I think this would have been a better pick than Zaire Williams would have been at 10 for the Grizzlies. This would have been a better pick for the Warriors even than Jonathan Kuminga would have been, I think. So Jared Butler here, this was an amazing pick for the Jazz. Probably the best, probably the steal of the draft. At 41, the Spurs go with Joe Wieskamp, small forward from Iowa. I think he's a shooter and not much else, which the Spurs, they already have some of those guys, especially after drafting Primo. So I don't love it, but I don't hate it a ton. 42, the Pistons went with Isaiah Livers, power forward from Michigan, versatile defender, 3-and-D guy. You know the drill. I gave it a B. I think that's a solid pick. I like Livers. Pick 43, the Blazers go with Greg Brown, power forward from Texas. He's really all upside. He has potential as like a blow-by guy, as a scorer, and he's one of the most athletic players in the class. He's a very good, he can be a very good shot blocker. I think Greg Brown is a solid pick here, but also you may need an instant contributor in Portland. I don't know if he's that guy. Give it a C. 44, the Nets took Kessler Edwards, power forward from Pepperdine. He's really a 3-and-D guy, which they needed, and a versatile defending forward. We've seen a lot of, so I give him an A for that pick. 45, the Celtics took Juhan Begarin, I don't know, it's shooting guard from France. I really thought Begarin, I really thought Juhan, or Yuhan. His name is so confusing, but I really thought Juhan was more of an upside guy, and I didn't really love his upside. I really thought he was more given the upside title because of his length, and he has some ball handling ability, but I don't love this pick. 46, I don't love or hate this pick with Delano Banton. Really more of an upside guy, probably from this point on. A lot of these guys are going to spend their first year in the G League. I think Banton is a long, he's what some people think Juhan Begarin is, like a long playmaking, potentially solid scoring guard from Nebraska. Not usual they have a guy drafted. But, with the 47th pick, the Raptors went with David Johnson, point guard from Louisville. I like this pick. I think that they're losing Lowry. Maybe this makes up for that because he's a solid defender, which the Raptors have a lot of. He's not a great scorer, but he's also a solid playmaker. So I think at number 47, Johnson was definitely good value for him. He could have, I think he could have gone maybe in the first round if the chips really fell his way. They didn't, obviously. At pick 48, the Atlanta Hawks went with Sharif Cooper, gave it an A plus. You've heard it before, but Sharif Cooper was an absolute steal. You know, he's one of the best playmakers in this class, probably top five. He's a really good scorer. He's an okay shooter. Um, he's a great understudy to Trae Young because he's very similar to Trae. I think that, Sharif is really. I think Sharif. This was one of the best picks in the draft, even though I didn't love Sharif, but he's not going to be good defensively, especially because he's very small. But with the 48th pick, come on, this is a very good pick. He must have like murdered a man or something. I don't know how he slipped that far down. There's something that we don't know that NBA teams do. Pick 49, Nets go with Marcus Zagorowski, point guard from Creighton. Just a solid shooter and defender. I don't think he's gonna end up playing for the Nets. They may end up trading him somewhere else where he plays. Whatever. Pick 50, the 76ers go with a stretch five and Filip Petrushev from Serbia. I like Petrushev. And then I think that they're replacing, they if Dwight Howard leaves in free agency, they don't have a backup center to Embiid. So I like the pick of Petrushev here. He used to play Gonzaga, and I think he's a good stretch five. He can definitely shoot it, and we'll just see if he can develop much else. Now the last 10 picks of the draft could go even faster on these ones. Pick 51, Clippers went with B.J. Boston, a guy that was projected to be like a top 5 pick this year before college at Kentucky, where he was not good, but he still does have like scoring upside. He still has good size and length, and shot creation potential, defensive potential. It's a really good pick for the Clippers because of all that potential, which is really what you're looking for late in the draft. Pick 52, the Pistons go with Luka Garza, center from Iowa, who could potentially be a stretch five. We'll see. He's definitely in the mold of a really good college player and not a great pro player because he's not going to be very good at all defensively, especially guarding, him switching onto smaller guys is a nightmare, just like Charles Bassey right below him and Sandro Mamakashvili. So those three guys not good switching onto guards, but it's not the worst pick in the world. Neither is Charles Bassey, who I think would have been a better pick, except that they got Petrushev. But Bassey has a lot of potential as a rim runner, shot blocker, all of that. Pick 54, arguably my favorite player in the draft, Sandro Mamukelashvili. I think he's the future Sabonis. He has, when he gets going in transition for Seton Hall, like if you watch Seton Hall and you see him get going in transition, he has a ridiculous handle. He's like 6'11", and he's a point guard basically. He has a ridiculous handle. He makes great, like, flashy passes. He's a great shooter. Not much defensively, but offensively, his skill set is good enough. Like, I think Sandro Mamukelashvili, I've called my shot enough times on Sandro, but I think he is a future superstar in the league. Someone gives him a chance. Pick 55, the Thunder go Aaron Wiggins. Really more of a shooter, which they could potentially need. So I give him a B minus. Pick 56, the Hornets go with Scotty Lewis, shooting guard from Florida. Don't know a ton about Lewis other than a little bit of him rubbing off based on me watching Trey Mann. I think is an okay pick. It's not the worst pick in the world. I think he's more of an athlete than anything. Same kind of with Balsa Koprivica, 57th pick from Florida State. I gave this pick a C minus because he's really not much more than a big tall guy. But also, I mean, a big tall guy like Boban Marjanovic has made a living in the NBA, so you could potentially see him do that. Pick 58. Oh, God, I forgot to mute again. Sorry, but my bad. Pick 58. The Knicks go with Jericho Sims, center from Texas. He's a solid rim runner. He was maybe the best center slash big man Texas had last year, including Kai Jones and Greg Brown. So there's something to be said about that. Um, I think this is a good pick for the Knicks. Hopefully he gets his opportunity because I think that he could be a solid NBA player. Pick 59, the Nets go with a versatile defender, which is what they need, and Raquan Gray, power forward from Florida State. I think that was a very good pick for Brooklyn. They didn't make a ton of those very good picks, but I think that one was. Then the last pick of the NBA draft, everybody wanted the Bucks to go Alex Antetokounmpo. They go with another guy from Greece, Georgios Kalaitzakis. Whatever. I really don't know much of anything about him. I assume he's like a ball handling forward. Um, but here are my best UDFAs from the NBA draft. I think Joel Ayayi, I think those top four are really the main guys to keep an eye on, even though especially Micah Potter I like from the other guys. But really the top four is Ayayi. He's really a do-it-all guy. I think he should get a fair amount of playing time in year one for the Lakers, and he can really be a difference maker. Um, Aaron Henry is a solid player. It's really, for Henry, it's all about how consistent can he be shooting the basketball. If he gains a consistency shooting the basketball in Philly, he can be a pretty good player. Trendon Watford, a good shot blocking and kind of stretch five from LSU, and Matthew Hurt, a good shooter from the great state of Minnesota, just like Jalen Suggs and Duke. So that will end my live stream. It's been a long live stream. My throat is extremely sore. I'm ready to hop off here, but any questions, please DM me on Twitter at BuckyBadgerW1. And I will see everybody next time. I may go live again in about 1 or 2 hours here. Maybe review like some trades on, if I can figure out how to live stream my screen, potentially review some trades on like TradeNBA.com or something like that. But until next time, I'm Bucky Badger W. Have a great rest of your day. I'll see you next time.